Alright, in this video, I'm going to call it the mistaken identity of the Mosin rifle, Mosin Nagant rifle. The Mosin Nagant was adopted by Russia, and there's two variations of rifle. The 91, the one here, the 9130. Now, other countries over time have used the rifle, mainly after World War II. The M44 style carbine with a folding bayonet was manufactured and used by several Eastern communist bloc countries, and the Chinese also made a version of it. The Finns, now when you take into consideration Finland, okay, and the rifles that they use, what they did is post World War I, they decided to use the M91 rifle as their standardized rifle. And what they did is they really didn't manufacture the rifles. They gathered up all the guns. They were given some as a war reparation. They captured some during World War I. And actually in the 20s, they just went and bought up from all these countries, because everybody was hurting financially. They would have went and bought up all of these firearms, and they reworked them, refurbished them, rebarreled them, and kept them somewhat in the original condition well into World War II. Okay? And Mosin's, okay, years ago, going back 40 years, the Chinese M44 style, or the Type 56 or something, I believe what it is, or something, was the most common one to come in with the big implosion of the Chinese stuff. Russian-made Mosins, if they did come into the country, generally when you found them, the M9130s, they were pretty beat up, rusty, and not that good. And it wasn't until years later that they were being brought in from the Ukraine, and that's what started off the Mosin craze. Also at that time, when they were selling guns like this one here, this round receiver M9130, for about, a C-note, or without the accessories even less, I've heard people of getting them for like 60, it started a big craze. Everybody was a Mosin Nagant expert. And also, during that time, these examples, like this M91 here that I have, would pop up. And I don't know where they came from. Basically, all of these guns were used by Finland because they have a Finnish mark on there. This particular gun here, okay, is a Setstroyetsky 1898, and it also has a AZF stamp, which is that this gun was captured in World War I by the Austrians, certified as serviceable, has this capture stamp on there, and then reissued to their troops. So this gun was probably given as war reparations to Finland or something somehow. So there are different variations of these guns, but they are mistaken. And what happens is, to those who are not into it, when they look at the profile of this rifle, the box magazine, the bolt, and the receiver, okay, all your variations of the Mosin had that visible shape of the action, okay, even though they look very different. To the untrained eye, or people who don't know, they mistake them for the same identical gun. They believe they're all the same gun. Now, this particular M91, being a Setstroyetsky arsenal, adds a premium to it in the condition. And this M9130, which I believe, I don't know if this is a Tula, in 1943, is a very common gun. But to the untrained eye, people would look at this and believe they're the same. Now, what the value is, the collector's value of these, anybody who's really into Mosins know that this gun is a tad bit more valuable than this gun. Now, I went to a gun show and I found a 9130 with $1,000, a grand price note or price tag on it. And I'm wondering, how would somebody with such a common gun come up or stand there with that as the listed, the asking amount? So I'm thinking, the only type of a gun would be like, I believe it's a Finnish model M1927, and that would look like this, an M91, which looks totally different than this, if you have any sense or paying attention. And they have some kind of weird modified barrel where it's turned down and that, and it takes this different bayonet. The Finns tried experimenting with this, found it that it wasn't cost effective and abandoned it. So for a very short period of time there was a strange modified rifle. Now I seen somebody that had a collection, must have been he knew something about them and went around, because I didn't for years until we started getting into the finer details of identifying these guns. I could have seen several of them like that and passed them up and not knew. But they are extremely rare and they're valuable. And at the time he was asking like 8C for them. This is going back about 5-6 years. So something like that, that looks like this, could have sold at an auction for 1K, and so the untrained would think, hey, they're selling M91s for, I've seen an auction where you got $1,000 for it. So my gun probably is worth, a K, and it's one of the most common guns you'll find. And that's another thing I notice. Another gun you don't see, but another gun that became a holy grail gun, I had one, is the Finnish M39 standard rifle. Now what this was is when the Finns had all these different modifications, they ended up redesigning the Mosin rifle with the M39. And it has the same magazine and action, and I don't have one. But when I did have one, all them years ago, I bought it for $65. Yeah, that's what I paid. Sold it for $75. Alright? The gun was like a club. It's shorter, it's nicer, and I'll show you something that resembles it. But they were, and it's true, they were deadly accurate. The way the Finns built them things were accurate as hell. It was an unwieldy gun. It really wasn't popular all that time back there, and I had to scrape together money. I wish I could have stored a lot of this stuff. But storing hundreds and hundreds of rifles in a climate-controlled area for 40 years is almost impossible. And again, my friend, he went into a gun shop. He said, I went in a gun shop, and the guys, they got a Mosin up on the front counter, and they wanted 3.5 at the time when you can get one of these for $1. Okay? And they were all over the place. You went to a gun show, there were several people that had cases and cases of them. And he goes, I ain't paying that for that. Well, it was an M39. I went into the shop and looked. It was an M39. It was going for, like I said, 3.5. See, then, a long time ago, I just went and checked online, and you can find them on the gun broker where they're bid up to 6C to 8. 6 to 8 in that range for these guns. And that was another gun that was touted as one of the most accurate, the greatest thing that there ever was. And it was a gun that really didn't sell for a lot, and people didn't want it one time. It's ugly as hell. But you see where people cannot tell the difference. And this is why you see a lot of psychotic prices on something like this, which is about 3.5 for this with the sling and the bayonet and everything is about the going rate. You might, if you get in an auction, someone gets a little twitchy, might go up 4.5. You know, you never know. Some places sell these, okay, for 5 and 6. These here, the most common types of the Mosin style rifle. And let's go on and talk about the finished one. As the Finns were rebuilding these guns, they used the receiver bolt actions and they rebarreled them. This particular gun is an M28 rifle. It was made for the Civil Guard or something. And what they would do is they would rebarrel these. They started changing the sights, the sight base here. The barrel bands were different than the M91. Still has the older sight on there. And eventually there was the M28 and the M28 30 or something was another one. And eventually they came to the M39. Okay, is how they perfected it. They had a step barrel. I think they shortened it even a little because this thing here is just about the same length as it's got a shorter barrel, but just kind of like the M9130. I think they shortened the M39 a few more inches and made the ultimate Mosin. Okay, the sight system was different, and but it's still the same Mosin, and these get mistaken. Now, this particular gun here, I purchased at an auction, and where the mistaken identity comes in is this is a somewhat harder to find firearm. It does have a value more than this gun here. This is one of the ones that had the barrels made by SIG in Switzerland. Because they couldn't keep up with the production when they were doing the model they were modifying for the Army. And I went to the auction looking to bid on a certain handgun that was there, and the bidding got crazy, so I'm just sitting there, you know, and I went all the way there, and I'm sitting there, and I traveled. And they didn't have a lot of firearms in this auction. It was like an estate auction. There were like 5 items that were firearms. The one handgun, a couple other guns, and then this, I think, was the only long gun, other than maybe a shotgun or something, in there. And when the bidding started on this, I even looked, I didn't pay attention, didn't look, I kind of glanced at it, you know, during the preview, because I wasn't interested in it. And the bidding started, and someone thought that this was an M9130. And the individual bid it up to 1.5, thinking that maybe he could double up. And, you know, the going rate at the time was, you know, and that was a stretch, going 3. So I bid it. One more increment up, I won it. Okay. And when I get home, I'm looking at the damn thing. I go, wait a minute. I thought it was just, you know, Finn capture or something. That's how they listed it. Finn captured gun. And I go, no, this isn't. And I'm trying to, that's when I started learning what the different models were and everything. And actually, I got a nice example at a reasonable price. So this is how mistaken identity or getting the wrong, call it mistaken identity, not knowing the variations of the firearm. And the Mosin Nagant is the one where people just see that action. That action did not change. The magazine, the bolt, the way the receiver is, a lot of people mistake them for a more common gun, or when they are going to sell, they mistake a common gun for a gun that is much more rare and valuable. So that's where the mistaken identity is. That's why you see some strange things. And sometimes the mistaken identity can work out into your favor in an auction environment. Alright guys, that's just a little sidebar talking about my guns. Hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned.